introduce myself. My name's Annie McRae. I'm a teacher in Edinburgh and involved in the EIS, the teaching union. I was just explaining to Katherine that unlike most unions, the EIS is obviously a Scotland-only union. It's not a UK-based one, in a sense that perhaps gives us more opportunities to provide a Scottish voice. Unfortunately, the EIS has found that quite often it has not meant that we've been able to win things. We've had, in small ways, we've had the Palestine issue raised within the union, and there's been a lot of good work, twinning and so on. We haven't yet won a boycott position in the EIS, but we're hoping perhaps to raise that at our next AGM and within the local associations. This next session, though, more importantly, is not just about that, but it's about generally what we can do in Scotland. We've had some superb discussions, I think, already. But Catherine's going to speak. Catherine Nastovski from Canada has had a lot of direct experience of what it means to raise the boycott issue and to win that. And so I'm going to ask Catherine to speak for about half an hour, probably. And then I think the session that we'll have after that is more talking practically about perhaps what has already been done around the unions, all the unions that are represented here, but also what we have to do over the next few weeks, months and years, and networking connects together. So, Katherine.
Thank you. Before I forget, I wanted to just mention that in terms of the charity, the kind of donations, humanitarian funds, that the PGFDU did put out a call a couple of days ago for a specific fund for Gaza. So that's a trade, something as a trade union can actually give some donations for. So hi all, I'm bringing greetings from Labour for Palestine Canada, the Coalition Against Israeli Apartheid, the Canadian Union of Public Employees in Ontario, and from the striking workers in my local, I'm on strike. We've been on strike for 2.5 months at York University in Toronto. And we've been on strike for 73 days now, and any solidarity letters from anybody here would be much appreciated. I'd also like to thank the organizers of the conference. I'm very glad to have been invited, and I'm really eager to learn more about all the great work that's happening here in all the different unions. So before I start, I'd actually like to know what unions are here. I know Unison is here, Unite, UCAT, what other unions? EIS. Any other? UCU? Okay. Any other unions?
Dundee Trade Union Council.
Okay.
And
great.
Edinburgh Trade Union Council.
Oh, wow. Great. Sorry? And which?
Kirkcaldy.
Oh.
I'm a Dundee Trade Union Council.
Great. I don't know where any of these places are, but...
I'm Scotland.
Yeah, I guess.
There's probably 3 places with the same name in Canada.
Yeah, probably.
Kirkcaldy.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you. So I'm going to talk about our work, our coalition work as Labour for Palestine, which is basically a group of various unions, mostly within Toronto and the surrounding areas, who have been working for the past 2 years to coordinate our actions across different trade unions, and also on our experiences in the boycott in Keepy. So in May 2006, our union, the Canadian Union of Public Employees in Ontario, which is the largest section of the largest union in Canada, adopted a resolution calling for boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israeli apartheid. Our union is comparable to Unison, representing over 200,000 public sector workers in health, education, municipal, and social services. I'm from the university sector. Our resolution, known as Resolution 50, was a direct response to the call that came from Palestine in 2005 for an international campaign of boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel. The call was issued by over 170 civil society organizations, including the vast majority of unions and union federations. It was modeled on the movement to end South African apartheid, calling for 3 things: an end to the occupation and dismantling of the apartheid wall, full equality for Palestinian citizens of Israel, and full compliance with UN Resolution 194, the right of return. To do this, our resolution called on our union to initiate an education campaign with members and do research to identify the ways that we support Israeli apartheid through our pensions, investments, and as consumers. Resolution 50, supporting the movement for boycott, divestment, and sanctions, or BDS, against Israel, was preceded by years of building in QP, doing education and organizing motions at various levels of the union, mostly anti-occupation resolutions or resolutions to develop educational materials. Immediately following the passing of the resolution, there was a lengthy media campaign against our decision, including numerous editorials and articles arguing that QP has no right to take positions on international issues and that our actions is sure to bring an end to trade unions altogether. There was also similar to what the brother from UCU was saying, also the why Israel kind of arguments were abundant amongst these responses. We were also met with a letter and phone campaigns, threatened lawsuits, protests in front of our offices, as well as various levels of intimidation and bomb threats against our members, leaders, and staff. As we speak, we are again actually in the midst of another media attack. In light of the current situation in Gaza, our division executive board put out a press release declaring that we will work to build an academic boycott. So in the university sector. And while the current attacks have not brought out the same level of response, in particular letters and op-eds from the Israeli ambassador and the history group, it has nonetheless created heated debates in our locals across the sector, including my own, with one local coming out publicly against the division, and our national union actually just put out a statement last week saying that an academic boycott is actually tantamount to discrimination and against our equity policy as a union. So it's a lot of internal battles as well that we're dealing with in the union. So during the time of Resolution 50, the letters of solidarity we received were critical. As Salim was mentioning, the one by William Adisha was one of the first that came in and was really important because we're very isolated, and we are still rather isolated in the North American context. So we were met with public opposition from our national leadership at that time, and we were met by public opposition from the leadership of the largest private sector union, the Canadian Auto Workers, which has historically been one of the more militant and progressive unions in Canada. But largely, most of the unions have remained silent and continue to remain silent today. At this time, we faced undermining by our national union. They felt that boycott, divestment, and sanctions was an extreme measure and out of line with our existing national policy. The only real difference, we argue, between our motion and the existing policy is that it actually asks members to take action. Okay? So our existing policy was actually in line with all of these things, all of international law, including 194, including ending the occupation and dismantling the wall. So the goals are actually the same. But we were, what was threatening was that this meant actual mass education, and it actually meant having more than just a position on paper, which is what the unions are really, most of the unions in Canada that's about all they're comfortable with these days. So solidarity, we argue, means taking direction from Palestinian workers and direction on what they're calling for and what solidarity looks like, which is right now boycott, divestment, and sanctions. That is very clear. And so we see it, we argue that this is a picket line. We Palestinians have put out a picket line, and we need to respect that picket line. Since the passing of Resolution 50, the dozens of union locals at national levels have taken positions to heed the call has been tremendous, especially in the UK and Ireland, and in South Africa have really helped us break from some of the isolation. Also in Quebec, there is a union of teachers union that's also developed their own educational material and is building a boycott campaign in Quebec. And just last April, the postal workers at a national union also put forward a position on boycott, divestment. So in terms of our organizing, the primary